Hi my friends, welcome to my second acrylic painting tutorial. Today we are going to do this image called Cabin in the Woods. Now if you don't have acrylic paints, tempera paints will also do. Watercolor will be a little bit difficult to follow the directions. It's a very different kind of medium and it might be more challenging for you, but you're welcome to try it. But basically any kind of paint that comes from a tube or a bottle will work better, okay? And because these videos take a long time, sometimes when I'm just painting like grass or trees or sky, I'll be fast forwarding through it. So that would be the time you could just pause the video, do some painting, and then start it again. And then we will be painting together. All right, let's get started. Okay, so here is my paint station. I have my paper taped to my backboard so it won't slide around while I am painting. I have my plastic takeout lid container that I use over and over again because it washes so clean. The paint colors that we're using today: yellow, light blue, dark green, light brown, a darker brown, and a little bit of black. Not a lot of paint. If I need more, I can always add more, but I'd rather have a little bit less. The brushes that I'm going to use, I want one wide flat one for the backgrounds. I want another this is kind of rough. If you have an old brush, that would be even better. It's a bit messed up. It's great for trees when you're just kind of dabbing. And then I have a fine, narrow brush, and that will be for more of the finer details on the cabin. I have here some newspaper or some magazine paper to rub some of the paint off on. I have my little cloth here. And then I like to have 2 jars of water. Okay, and I believe we are ready to go. Okay, I forgot to mention we are going to need a tiny little bit of red and a tiny little bit of white as well when we get started. Or actually, when we come close to the end. What we're going to do first is just mark out our sun in the top left corner of our painting. I'm going to take my thin brush, get just a little bit of yellow on it, and just make a bit of a circle. And then I'm going to get some water and just go around that because I don't want it very dark. I want to keep it white in the very center and just go around with some light watery yellow. Now I'm going to take my wide brush, wet it, and rub it off on the towel a little bit so it's not too wet. And I'm going to take some of my light blue paint, and I'm painting, you see how I'm painting sideways here in the sky? I'm not brushing it all flat like this. I'm brushing it on an angle because I don't want it too heavy. And I'm taking some water and I'm just kind of blending it. And I don't want to go right into the sun because I know the blue and the yellow is going to make green. And I'm leaving some white bits in here because the sky does sometimes have just little white wisps of cloud. And I want to bring this color all the way down to the bottom of my painting. It's going to be covered with other colors, but it will also help enhance those other colors. So I'm just going to cover blue very lightly all the way down. I'd rather have blue than white showing through the other colors. And up in my sky, I'm going to get some blue on my brush, just on the very tip here. See that? And I'm going to add some nice blue streaks in my sky. I'm going to take my fine brush. This is like a fine liner. And I'm going to put it in the water to make it wet, dry it off a little bit on my towel, and get some of my light brown on my brush. And I think I'm going to make my cabin kind of in the center over to the right. So I'm going to put an A right on the center. Doesn't have to be too dark. You're just kind of marking it in for now. You might have to wet your brush a few more times. Then I'm putting the top of the roof along. and then putting the back roof down. In the front, I'm going to make sure that that's a bit of an overhang, so I'm going to bring this one wall down, but you see it doesn't come right to the end of that part of the roof overhang. Same with this one. It's going to come down. I'm going to put a line that goes back and joins my back one, and a little bit of the wall down here. This part of the wall is longer, and you see how it kind of gets smaller as it goes back. That's because of the perspective drawing. I'm also going to put a door in here. And maybe I'll put a little window right in the center of my cabin. Okay, with your fuzzy brush, wet it and dip it into your dark green paint, and we're going to make a tree line just from the top of the cabin, just by dabbing very lightly. Just like that. Mine's a little snaky. And we're just dabbing, and you see how I'm turning my brush in my hand too? Just to get the different kinds of bristles to show up in different angles and directions. Maybe I have a bit of a taller tree right here in the center, so I'm bringing that one up a little bit. I'm just going to bring that close to the cabin. Don't worry if you get some of the green on top of the cabin. We're still going to paint that roof and cabin, so not a big deal. Now I'm going to bring it lighter down a little further, just because I'm going to pretend that these woods are very thick and we can't see through them because there's so many little trees in between. We're going to be putting brown in there as well. So just put all that green in there. You might have to wet your brush a little bit. I'm going to get some more green on my brush, and I'm going to come and do the other side. Look at my brush is not as fluffy right now because it's a bit wet, but I can make it look like the shape of trees. Now I'm going to try to use this brush and use the side of it just to get some ground down here. I'm going to use some of the dark green that we're using. I might get a little bit of brown in there. If you don't like this brush, which I'm not feeling too happy with right now, get the brush that you used for the sky. It should be clean, it's wet, and get some green on it. And again, scrape it rather than brush the whole thing. We're using kind of like just different techniques, different ways to use the brush. Now I'm going to wash that off a little bit, dry it, and get some of the brown that we used for the cabin, the light brown, and I'm going to put that into some spaces. Just very lightly, blending with the green. I'm going to do it over here especially so it kind of looks like a path or a road to the cabin. Okay, and that's good for now. I want to make sure all my brushes are clean. So the next thing that I want to do is get some light green at the top of my trees. So I'm going to take, I have this brush here that I like to use for dabbing sometimes. You may not have a brush like this, just use whatever brush you're most comfortable with. Dip it in the water and then dip it into your light green and just go over the tops of your trees a little bit. You're going to blend that. We are blending the two colors, the dark green and the light green. And we'll get some depth in the trees in our painting. I'm going back into my dark green, and I'm making sure that that gets in here, especially at the bottom. It will be darker near the bottom where there's so much foliage, not enough sunlight. It'll stay really green. I think I'm going to just extend my green down here so it looks like it's kind of a clearing here where the cabin is, and it's just surrounded by trees, and maybe up front here, these are like bushes. Maybe they're flower bushes, maybe they're berry bushes. You know what some artists would do, because I noticed that this brush makes it look like a fingerprint? They would do that. They would just dab their fingers in the paint and put it on the canvas. Anything goes. Okay, I'm going to go back into my light green and do the tops of the trees and blend up all in. You can put it at the tops of your berry bushes or flower bushes too, because the leaves that are at the top are the ones that are exposed to the sun, and they would normally get bleached a little bit by the sun. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit more patches of dark green in my clearing. Okay, now I'm going to take my fine brush again, which is my little fine liner here, wet it and dip it into some dark brown. And let's just make some tree trunks. They don't have to be perfectly clear because a lot of them are in the background and we don't see them completely. So I'm putting some shorter ones and some skinnier ones and making them a little bit lighter in the back. You can make some branches going through the tops of the trees, just little bits of brown, and we don't see them all because they're covered by leaves, right? And we'll be blending all this later. We just want to get this color in here right now because you can't just make a big blob of green, right? You need depth, contours, which is like shapes. I'm putting some brown on the ground too because there are stumps and logs and fallen branches. So I've got my brown all within the woods there now. I want to go back over with some dark green. And I'm dabbing over some of the brown and I'm blending it and I'm just making it look more natural, like there are lots of trees covering the trees in the back. I want to put a little bit of brown in my bushes in the front and just towards the bottom of them. So I'm getting the brown on the same brush. I didn't wash it, just dipped it into the brown, giving the bushes some darkness. Bringing that brown up, putting it at the base, the bottom of my trees. Okay, then I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to go back with my little brush, dip it into my light green and just go back and dab it on some of the trees again, just to bring out some lightness in them. I'm going to take my fat brush and make a bit of a mixture of the light and dark green. And I'm just going to go over my open field here. I just want to get both colors in there and then dab it with a bit of the brown. And I want to blend it all. Okay, clean your brushes. We're going to get ready to paint the cabin. Okay, so take one of your brushes. I'm using my little pointy fat one. and the light brown, and let's paint inside our cabin. I'm going to take my little bit of red paint and put it on the roof. And I'm just going to blend some of the dark brown in with it. I'm going to take my smaller brush and I want to take the dark brown and just outline the cabin. So this side of our A-frame here, make that nice and dark. In fact, I'm going to dip a little bit into the black too, just to make it nice and dark. Then down that side, this corner, and the back end. Got my black on the inside because this side is going to remain pretty shaded from the sun. Also underneath this part of the roof line here, it's also going to be dark. Kind of like a shadow because it's hanging over the window. I want to make my window a little bit dark. I'm using black with a little bit of the dark brown, and I'm just going to darken the window. We can't see what's inside the cabin, so it's just going to look dark. I'm going to make a red door. It's a nice little cabin in the woods, and a red door would be so cool. And then I'm going to take a little more red and go back onto my roof and make it a little brighter. Now I am going to use my fine brush again and dip it into the dark brown, and we're going to make some lines on our cabin that look like logs. So we'll do the first one, and it's kind of a wide line, and leave a nice wide space between. One just above the door that goes all the way across. Okay, and we'll do it on the side of the cabin as well. I'm also going to take that brown and color a little bit on the top of the cabin in that little point there, because it's going to look a bit like a shadow, because the sun is behind the cabin over there, and it just gives it a little bit of depth. Brush a little bit of that brown just on the roof. Okay, and I think I will take a little bit more of the brown, mix it with some black to make it just a little bit darker. And I'm going to put a frame around the door and the window. Careful not to make it too thick looking. A little doorknob. And I think I'll just put a little bit of darkness in here to make it look like a bit of a window on the door too. And I'm going to get the darker color, mostly black, and put it around the window, so it looks like a neatly framed window. Okay, I'm also going to mix that little bit of brown black that I did around the door, and I'm going to put a little chimney on the top. I might make a little square or make it a little bit longer so that it's a rectangle, and just sit it up there on top of our little cabin. Now I want to put just a little bit of, I'm going to mix some white and just a little bit of black to make it like a dark gray color. And I'm going to dab it into the window in a straight line just to look like a bit of a window pane on the inside. A little bit of color. I'm also going to dab it a little bit on the top of my house. Might look like a little bit of sunshine hitting it, a little bit on top of the chimney and on the side. A little bit of lightness down here, a little bit on the door, and I'm making a little bit of lines on my roof. Okay, another thing you can do is make a little smokestack coming from your chimney if you want. I've got a little bit of gray there, and I might make a little bit of white closer to the top here. Oof. Okay, now this is where we take our step back, look at it and say, okay, we need something here in the green. I want to make some more bushes, and I think I'm going to put little dabs of yellow and maybe some red in my bushes. They could be flowers or berries, whatever. It's just going to be something pretty. I think I need to put a little bit more brown for the darkness on my trees just to make some of those stand out. But the first thing I'm going to do is clean my little brush again, get a little bit of yellow on there, mixed with a little bit of white, and I'm going to go back and just add some highlights to my sun. It's too bright, so I'm dipping it in the water and lightening it a little bit. Now I'm really watering down my yellow, getting more of a wet, watery brush, because I don't want it very dark, but I am just going to spread a little bit of yellow into the sky around so it looks like it's a bit of a glow, just pressing out into the sky. Okay, now I'm going to take my, I think I want to take my skinny brush again, and I'm using the dark brown, and I'm just going to darken some of these tree trunks. Not all of them, because we did a good job just putting some in the background and then covering them with leaves, but now we're just going to make a few stand out because they're a little bit more in the front. Okay, now I am going to take my chunkier pointy brush and make it wet and amp it into the green and bring these bushes out a bit more. And I'm going to put some right by the cabin here too. But I want some brown here in front of my door because we can't have perfectly green grass in front of the door, right? There's probably a path and people are walking on it with their dirty shoes. So it looks a little bit more worn in there. I can even put a bit of white to make it look gray. Okay. And I like some of this light green in here too. Okay, shall we put some little yellow flowers in our bushes here? Get your thin brush, get some yellow paint on it, and just dab it. Shall we add some red too? Just because we have it on our palette, and it does make the picture a little brighter and more beautiful. I'm going to put some right by the cabin too. Maybe they're roses, maybe they're geraniums. Whatever they are, they just make our painting look a little brighter and beautiful. I might even just put a few in the woods here. Now you know, if you want to make it look really natural, this yard is probably filled with weeds, right? Dandelions, which are beautiful. Let's put some dandelions in our field. Whoa, that's a lot of paint on my brush. Okay, and I think we are done. There we have it. Our cabin in the woods. Thanks for painting, everybody. And remember, if you want to subscribe, click that little subscribe button and then you'll get notifications of every new video that I post. All right, bye for now.